Now, the very sad week for Major League Baseball as the game lost one of its greats, Hall of Famer Tony Gwynn, passing away less than a week ago at the age of 54, an 8-time batting champion, a .338 lifetime hitter who spent his entire Major League career playing for the San Diego Padres after he was both a baseball and a basketball star at San Diego State, and then, of course, was the coach at San Diego State for the last 12 years. Back in Anaheim, Dan Shulman along with John Kruk and Buster Olney, and you two guys both knew Tony very well. And Krucky, let me start with you. He was a teammate of yours in the minor leagues back in the early 80s.
Yeah, we were actually roommates for one summer, and it was a very fun time. I mean, we rented bikes that summer, and we rode our bikes to and from the ballpark, to and from an arcade, which Tony loved the arcade, but I had no interest in it. But if he went, I went. But he was a great mentor, a great friend. I know I wouldn't have been near the hitter I was without him. He taught me a lot.
Well, tell people first, so let's talk about Gwynn as a hitter, but we also want to hear you talk about Gwynn as a person.
Well, as a hitter, there was, I remember going to the Phillies, and the first time we played the Padres, they called me in the pitcher's meeting and said, okay, how are we going to pitch Tony Gwynn? They started laughing. I said, you better get the first hitter, the third hitter, the fourth hitter out, because he's going to get his. Nothing you can do about it. As a person, none better. Like I said, he was the biggest help to me. Even when I was still in the minor leagues and he was in the big leagues winning batting titles, always came down to minor league camp to visit, say hi, see how I'm doing. There's days I would show up and there'd be a new glove, outfielder's glove and batting gloves and stuff, because he knew we didn't get that stuff down there. He took care of me. And
he was really a guy who, one of the originators of looking at at-bats on video, right? He would travel a VCR on the road with him, right?
Yeah, he was the first. He actually had him put in Jack Murphy Stadium. They had him put in a little video room, and I see him kept going in this room, and I'm like, what is this? What's he doing in there? So one day he took me in there. He had my at-bats on a reel because I was struggling, and he was showing me stuff. Do you see this? Look at this. Watch what you're doing here. Look what you're doing here. Look what's happening here. And I look at him like, I don't see a thing. I don't know what you're talking about. But as time went on, I got to figure that stuff out. And then after I got to Philadelphia, I used the video technology more so than I did in San Diego.
Well, against Greg Maddux, so you've got Gwynn and Maddux, two legendary performers at their respective positions. Tony Gwynn went 39 for 94, a .415 average, and never struck out. Not that Maddux was a huge strikeout guy, but in 94 at-bats, never struck out once against Greg Maddux.
Yeah, he really was amazing. And as my first job covering Major League Baseball was covering the Padres and Tony Gwynn. And the great thing about him was he was just so inclusive. And he would talk to you when you went up to him after a game and you'd say, hey, what happened in that at-bat? He'd walk you into that side room that Krucky talked about, and he'd show you his at-bat on video, because he understood that if he included writers, he really was including fans. And for me, he was an absolute gift to be able to learn about baseball from Tony, to be around him. And, long after I was covering the Padres, I'd call him up, and he was as open as possible. Mm-hmm. And that's why this week, when you read all the things about Tony, so many of them were personal, were from reporters who had relationships with him like I did.
But guys, what did it mean to him to spend his whole career in San Diego?
It was the most important thing. From the very start, that's all he wanted to do. And we talked about it one year, why don't you go somewhere else? You know how much money you can make if you go, somewhere else, go free agent, you could make so much more money. And his response, he looked at me like I was nuts, and he goes, but my family might not like it there. And that's all he cared about. He wanted his family to be happy. His wife, his two kids, if they were happy, he was happy. And that's all he cared about. And San Diego was their home, and they loved it there. And, he is what San Diego sports is all about. Yeah.